Thank you all for being here today for our first virtual coffee chat with a Science Diplomat of 2022. We are very excited to have Mireille Guyader with us. Mireille is the Consular for Science and Technology at the Embassy of France in the United States since September 2021. She is a researcher, also she's a research supervisor at the French National Institute for Health and Medical Research in CERN since 2015. Previously, she was a researcher in CERN for 18 years with research focusing on HIV and related viruses. Today, we will have our coffee and talk about her career path, science and technology policies of France, scientific diasporas and networks, research opportunities, projects, and various topics on science diplomacy. Welcome, Mireille, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, Daria. Thanks for having me for this coffee chat, and thanks to everyone joining us this morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Before we get started, I want to say a few words about myself. My name is Derya Büyüktanır Karacan, and I am the program manager of EURAXESS North America, and I am also a visiting scholar at George Washington University. With my colleague Jackson Howard, we are one of the 9 EURAXESS hubs worldwide, disseminating opportunities for researchers of all nationalities in all fields who wants to create partnerships with Europe. I want to invite our audience to write their questions in the chat box, which we will get to towards the end. And a quick reminder that this webinar is going to be recorded and shared later. So Mireille, let's start our talk with your professional development that led you to become a science diplomat. What would you like to say about this?
Sure, my pleasure. Well, looking back to where I started as a scientist, the truth is that I had no idea that my path would lead me one day to science diplomacy. Scientific research, and in particular research related to improving human health, was really my objective, and it is a path in which I projected myself very early on with no guarantee of success. And however, this is something I was engaged in with much passion, I have to say. I was lucky enough to do my thesis in the laboratory that had just sequenced the genome of the virus responsible for AIDS at the Pasteur Institute. And it was really this exciting adventure that opened for me the doors to a scientific career. My work led to publications and gave rise to the development of reliable diagnostics tests that are still in use today throughout the world. I'm pretty proud about this achievement, I have to say. It was all going very fast for me at that period, maybe too fast. I was recruited at INSERM, the French National Institute on Health and Medical Research, shortly after my thesis, and I worked after that for 18 years in the AIDS research field, with research focused on better understanding the HIV viruses, mechanisms of transmission, for instance, between mother and child. And my very last project, I think, was about visualizing in real time the virus entry process into target cells. And this was thanks to a collaboration with optics experts. What I can say is that during my career as a scientist, I had numerous opportunities to to really benefit from collaboration with researchers coming from different parts of the world, and that these experiences were always truly game changers in my scientific life. I also learned how difficult it is to stay competitive in science, and I have experienced some of the challenges that every scientist faces from time to time, having to manage at the same time the search for funding, performing the best research possible, training students, and succeeding in publishing in the best journals. And that are real challenges even today. I would say even more today. And so at some point I realized that I wanted to engage in another path. I wanted to have an impact on science on a broader scale, contributing to partnerships at the international level, strengthening scientific ties between countries. And that's when the opportunity of becoming a science attaché became a reality. I think it was in 2006 that I joined for the first time the Office for Science and Technology as a science attaché. I was in charge on life sciences and biotechnologies. And I was assigned to the Consulate General of France in Los Angeles. And it was a real challenge for me. I made a big leap from the labs to diplomacy directly without real training. So I had to learn fast, but it was also a revelation. My first experience as a science attaché was an extremely rewarding experience. In fact, I had a blast. I was the first in Los Angeles, which means that everything had to be done from scratch, building a scientific network, making strong connections with the scientific community in France, promoting student mobility, attracting young scientists to France, were only some of the tasks I had to fulfill. And this was really an amazing experience. And I was able to capitalize on it when I later become director of the INSERM office in Washington, DC. And maybe what I can say is that my last position in France at IRD a few years ago, the IRD is the French National Institute for Sustainable Development, has really opened my eyes to what needs to be achieved at the international level, and the more than ever necessity to fill the gap between science discoveries, decision-making, and impact to societies. Really, more efforts needs to be made to meet global challenges. We know that, we are already late, and I want to commit to that as a science counselor.
Wow, thank you, Mireille. When I listened to you, I realized that you use keywords like passion, exciting adventure, collaboration, game changers, attraction, and impact on society, which all give me the idea that you were truly aware of what you wanted in your life, dedicate to science and also to society. So you began your career in the lab, right? Working many hours to find new things, to invent new things, and then you follow a different path to science policy and science diplomacy. So this might inspire the young scholars who are searching for different paths, I think. And your career is really inspiring. And also your current position as a science counselor is more challenging, I guess, because of the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and the France taking over the presidency of the Council of the EU for a 6-month period on January the 1st, 2022. So what is the agenda of France for the Union regarding higher education, research, and innovation? How will that strategy translate into your office's events or programming?
Yeah, thank you, Daria. Yes, you're right. Becoming a science counselor in those troubled times is indeed a challenge. On the other hand, taking over the presidency of the EU Council is an opportunity also for us to promote the values shared within Europe. And in terms of higher education, research, and innovation, our agenda has been defined by the 2 ministries back in Paris that we work with. Of course, the Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs, but also the Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Innovation, which is responsible for our core projects here. So I can say that there are 3 main priorities that have been outlined. The first one is to support the economic recovery and the green and digital transitions, and this by enhancing synergies between higher education, research, innovation, and service to society. The second one would be to promote the European research arena to the rest of the world and to the United States in particular for me. and enhance the appeal of Europe to foreign teachers, researchers, and students. And the third one is to strengthen the sense of belonging. What means belonging to Europe? This is, we want to achieve that by supporting European universities and by removing obstacles to transnational cooperation between European institutions. Just to give you an example, 32 French universities are currently involved in 28 European universities initiatives. And these initiatives are alliances of higher education institutions from 3 European Union member states or more. And they stand really at the intersection of research, innovation, and higher education. And the French government is providing support of at least 100 million euros over 10 years to the French institutions involved in these projects. So you were asking, how does it translate into our office programming? Well, we take the opportunity of the French presidency to promote European research to our United States partners and to foster EU-US collaboration. Since January and until this summer, we are hosting multiple events and meetings across the United States to carry out the priorities set out by our government. Some of these events are organized in coordination with the EU delegation to the United States. For instance, EU delegation science counselor Florent Bernard gave a speech on this year's first Science Diplomats Club event in February, and we were very honored to have him. And a number of other projects are underway throughout our French consulates in the US on subjects as broad as health data sharing, open science, quantum, and climate sciences. Finally, you mentioned the war in Ukraine, and this is a subject that is very important to me. I want to express the solidarity of the French embassy and our scientific network with the Ukrainian people. And actually, France's doors are now open to Ukrainian scientists. France recently announced that our National Emergency Welcome Program for Scientists and Artists in Exile, the PAUSE program, will allow Ukrainian scientists to come to France for a period of 3 months. We are also working at the EU level. This conflict accelerated the urge to reaffirm our shared values of international cooperation. And in practical terms, EU member states gathered in Marseille early in March as part of the EU French presidency to discuss a common framework on higher education, research and innovation. And the Marseille Statement, as it is known now, calls for a global approach based on a set of values and principles that include, for instance, freedom of scientific research, ethics and integrity, research excellence, gender equality, open science, intellectual property protection, societal and environmental responsibility, and even more. So these are really values that we all share at the European level.
Thank you, Mireille. So as I see, you work not only to strengthen the science, technology, and innovation of France, but also promote the values or the European values, encourage collaboration and strengthen the relations between the countries. So you're doing a lot. I just want to switch another topic. There is another fact that a growing number of countries have been working to excel at science, technology, and innovation in our very competitive world. So what makes France unique or special in the scientific arena? It's very competitive, I know. So what you're doing in France in general to promote the science, technology, and innovation landscape?
Yes, you're right, Daria. Well, maybe when you think about France, the first thing that comes to your mind is probably not our science and technology. You would think about good food, culture, fashion, and whatnot. But the truth is that France is also a country of excellence in higher education, research, and innovation. And that is probably a lesson known of our country and one we work actively to promote. In fact, for a decade now, France has been working to create clusters of excellence, bringing together universities, grandes écoles, national research centers, and industry, aiming to reach a world-class level of research and to improve international visibility. And as a consequence, numerous French universities and grandes écoles are now ranking high in the most renowned international rankings. And studying in France for a foreign student means benefiting from its recognition also. It is also one of the world's most financially accessible systems of higher education. And this is not known enough, I think. Mm. This reputation is in particular due to exceptional achievements of French scientists. In total, 17 Nobel Prizes have been awarded to French people, which ranks France fourth among countries, for instance, in medicine, in physics, or in chemistry. And if we talk about mathematics, almost 1/3 of all fields medal recipients come from French laboratories. France is second in the world in mathematics in terms of number of medals after the United States. One thing I should mention also is that since 2010, France has invested a lot in promising and innovative initiatives throughout the country and in strategic sectors such as ecological transition, for instance, or digital economy. With a budget of 20 billion euro over 5 years, the fourth round of investments was launched last year. And this funding comes in addition to the research programming law, which already provides 25 billion of euro over 10 years for research. And maybe one envelope I would like to emphasize is the 12.5 billion euro to specific acceleration strategies on domains such as hydrogen or infectious diseases or cybersecurity or sustainable cities, to just name a few. So there is a real investments that is made by France in specific domains. And France has also developed top-notch research infrastructures. I wouldn't be able to name all of them, but for instance, the Paris Santé Campus in the domain of e-health, or the newly inaugurated cyber campus in La Défense, regrouping the main cybersecurity academic and private stakeholders, are one of the newest innovation in France. At the EU level also, we can be really proud of us, if I may say. We are ranked second in the list of beneficiary countries for EU grants, which really demonstrates a real dynamism of French research. And maybe I will finish in saying that France has a research environment that is increasingly open to the world. And France ranks 5th in the EU patent application amongst world countries. CNRS, the main research organization in France, recruits about 1/3 of its researchers from abroad. We have 42% of PhD students in France that are foreigners. And of all French scientific publications, over 60% are carried out with foreign partners. And about 1/4 of this publication involves American scientists. So really, we are open to the world.
Yes, very much. Thank you, Mireille. The numbers are amazing. I mean, you put a lot of, I think, emphasis on research and development and science to also compete with the other countries as well, as I understood. So thank you for sharing various examples of the research landscape of France, the success of French scientists, universities, and how France is open to the world, foreign partners, and students and researchers. So what do you think about the competition for talent? I think it's one of the hot topics that recently we are discussing. So more countries are in this race to attract and retain more highly skilled talents. So how do you advertise France as a destination for education and research? What are the main challenges? How do you see France in the global race for talents?
Well, yes, what I can say is that we take every opportunity we can to promote the attractivity of France to our foreign partners. For instance, we will take part in the upcoming European Research Day organized by you, EURAXESS North America on May 10, and we are very happy to be partner of that. And we also attend the main career fairs that are organized in the United States, as an example, the MIT one or the NIH one, among others. We also take the opportunity of visits of French experts, industry, or official delegations to the United States to promote the French research and higher education landscape. We had the visit in December of the French Ministry of Higher Education and Research and Innovation. It's true that France is part of this rapidly evolving and even more competitive international landscape. We need to keep up the pace and even accelerate in some fields if we want to remain in the competition. We are a small country, and so the challenge is even bigger. To do that, we have some challenges ahead. The first one is to boost France's visibility in higher education, research and innovation still. For too long, France was absent from the main rankings of world universities. And today, for instance, Paris-Saclay University ranks number 13 in the world and number 1 in mathematics. As I said earlier, the excellence of French universities is now reflected in some of the world's most renowned university ranking. We also need to clarify our researcher status. France's researchers are hired as civil servants, as you may know, which usually gives room for more risky and long-term projects. The flip side of that is that the salary for researchers in France is still below other leading research countries. However, researchers in France usually enjoy a more affordable cost of living and a greater employment security, as wages are handled by national research institutes such as CNRS or INSERM, as opposed to being included in grants. Not to mention that recipients of ERC grants are able to develop their own projects in France or wherever they choose in Europe. I think a big step has been taken with the new research programming law, including several measures aiming at offering more opportunities for young scientists to start or pursue their careers in France, besides the one offered by the main research organizations. For instance, startup packages have been launched, contracts between the public and the private sectors have been favored, increased flexibility to move between academia and the private sector is also part of the law. All these measures go towards increasing France's attractiveness. There is still to be done, but I think it's going in the right direction. This is definitely something we need to keep working on to make France even more attractive to foreign researchers and help returning French researchers consider again France as their home country.
Thank you, Mireille. And you shared both the opportunities and also some of the challenges when the researchers want to come to your country. But as I see, you have many, especially that part, the living expenses, and when you compare with the funding that you can offer, it's amazing. So thank you for sharing all of these information. The first time I'm hearing about that, and probably the researchers are going to search for it. And today we are going to share some of the links there also about your funds, your fellowships. Now you can, audience can see it in the chat box, but later on we are all going to share with them with our post-event message so that you can reach all these fellowships or these funds supported by by France, I mean the French funds too. So you mentioned that you are open to the world. So how about the relations with the US in terms of transatlantic research collaboration? This is another hot topic, right? So can you tell us about the France-US bilateral relations and the French approach to science diplomacy? What is the role of science diplomats in French diplomatic enterprise?
Well, thank you for this question, Daria. You know that, I mean, France and the United States have a historical bilateral relationship, one that has always overcome crises and tensions, as demonstrated a few months ago. And the United States is indeed France's first scientific partner, with over 21,000, I think, co-publication per year. So this relationship drives much of our approach to science diplomacy in the United States, whether it's by facilitating scientific collaboration or supporting transatlantic mobility. Our team here strives to offer our scientific communities the best cooperation framework through various types of programs, and I would be happy to share all of these programs later on with the audience. Maybe a few words about our office and how it is organized. So it's one of the 5 scientific networks that France has established in the world, and the largest one by the size of the team and our geographical coverage and the themes we cover. In the United States, we are present in 6 consulates general. We are in Atlanta, in Boston, in Chicago, in Houston, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, and at the embassy in Washington, DC. We are a team of about 25 people, which includes university professors, research directors, or engineers, with a wide range of skills in many, many fields. And I won't list all of them, but basically we cover all the fields from health to mathematics and engineering sciences and environmental sciences. Apart from the United States, France has scientific networks in Germany, in Japan, in the United Kingdom, and in Russia. And relative to other countries in the world, the human resources that are devoted to science and research at French embassies are important. This is first of all due to the historical size of the diplomatic network of France, and the third just behind the United States and China. Maybe to put things into context for our audience, the posting of science counselors and attachés at embassies is part of the long historical tradition of French cultural action abroad, starting at the end of the 19th century by the creation of French cultural centers and schools. And the first scientific attaché position, I think, was created in 1955. Can you believe that? And the network in 1963. So a long history behind us. So to answer your question on France's approach to science diplomacy, let me give you a few examples on our concrete strategy in that field. We have a very pragmatic approach, in fact, and pretty much in line with the one of our American partners. And France is indeed one of the few countries with the United States to have an active strategy. And it is actually set to be updated soon. One of the great examples to me of our action in science diplomacy is the joint committee meeting between France and the United States last December, we got together for the sixth of this meeting with our US counterparts from the research community and the federal government to set forth new priorities for our scientific bilateral collaborations. Avenues for enhanced collaboration were identified in the fields of health, environment, and emerging technologies, for instance. And a joint statement has been published by both sides at the issue of this meeting. Another example I would like to make is when France launched the Make Our Planet Great Again initiative in June 2017, following the United States withdrawal from the Paris Agreement. We wanted to show the world that researchers and scientists working on climate change could always rely on France. We invited researchers, students, entrepreneurs, and others to France to lead the fight against global warming. And to date, over 200 scientists and international students have been hosted in France under this program, which is one of the manifestations of France's renewed influence in climate diplomacy.
I noted. So thank you, Mireille. Earlier you mentioned the Science Diplomats Club. So would you like to give us a bit more about information about this initiative that you have started in the US?
Yeah, sure. Well, this is not one of an initiative that I launched. Definitely not. It's something that existed for a long time. The Science Diplomats Clubs, it's also known as SDC for the people in Washington, is a social club that was founded in Washington in 1965. So you see, and members include science counselors, attachés, representatives of research institutions from more than 40 embassies, and about half of them are European. We also invite representatives from the main US science agencies to discuss with us. And the aim of the club is to provide an informal meeting place and a networking channel for science diplomats. This club offers a forum where on a monthly basis, we get together to receive briefings on current science and technology issues. And I'm very happy to say that the SDC was able to resume officially last February after a 2-year break due to the pandemic. And this was a great opportunity for us. Our latest SDC event was dedicated to the United States Senate and House competitiveness bills currently under discussion in Congress. And on this occasion, we welcomed, for instance, staff members from both chambers of Congress to discuss the bills with the science diplomats here. And it was a very rich discussion. It's really exciting to be able to resume in-person events after 2 long years of webinars.
Yes. It seems that we are turning back to our normals again, right? Just in-person meetings. And as EURAXESS North America, we also attended the last month's meeting of Science Diplomats Club, and we had the chance to hear about these discussions and updates. So part of our job at EURAXESS is to support European scientific diaspora networks. And some European countries don't have a network of researchers in North America, and others exist as an informal group. And but there are some formal groups which the government supports them. So with their fundings or with their offices. So France stands out one of the countries with several organizations. So how do you support or communicate with these networks of French researchers working in the US, Mireille?
Well, what I can share with you is that, of course, bringing together our scientific diasporas is one of our main priorities. Individual initiatives from researchers contribute highly to this objective. And we have several initiatives currently in the United States. One of them is the DEFI USA initiative, which is a network of French PhD based in New York, and which was created a few years ago by French scientists themselves to get together, share concerns and opportunities, and exchange advice and more. And as it happens, New York is the only major US city where our network of science attaché is not represented. And it is probably no coincidence that French researchers there expressed the need to get together. At the Office for Science Technology, we really work to encourage those initiatives. And there are others like French at NIH or the NEST initiative that were launched and are still active throughout the United States. There is no funding coming from our French government to support those initiatives, but we are at the Science Office eager to help them and to make them grow. We really want to build upon them to create an overarching network beyond academia, to include the private sector as well, to include decision makers, alumni networks, and so on. Unfortunately, the pandemic has slowed down our efforts towards this goal, but we hope that it can be revigorate very quickly. And likewise, we take every occasion to collaborate with you guys at EURAXESS because we want to promote European communities and because we think that our collaboration can be mutually beneficial. And we are very happy to do that. We organize regular networking events across the United States with local French scientists, either breakfast or apéro, where we give them the opportunity to present their research activities to their fellow researchers. And in our 6 consulates across the United States, our teams of attachés and deputy attachés work hand in hand with local scientists to answer their needs and help communities expand.
Thank you, Mireille. Thank you for your support also to EURAXESS, not only the diaspora networks, but you're with us and you're all the time, you know, whenever we need, you just come with your whole team, and thank you all for this. And I just want to say that we also have a very close relationship with DEFI USA, and we organize together, some events, joint events. They have a great team, energetic, and they have all the time new ideas to keep the French scientists closer and help them in various ways. And they inform about fundings, how to get the visas, how to live in the US, how to go to France again, you know. So they're very helpful in many ways. So there are lots of things to talk about, the importance and power of networks and how scientific diasporas can contribute at local, international, and also global levels. Because all the scientists or researchers can speak a common language, and this is science. And these networks have the power to initiate change. So as far as I know, your embassy policies and initiatives to support scientific diasporas are very significant, and you shared most of them with us, how you really support them, try to keep the connection with them. So how do you, in what way do you think having a network of researchers like yours can help countries? What are the contributions of scientific diasporas to their home, also host countries?
Yeah, indeed, Daria. I think diasporas can contribute in ways that we sometimes would not have imagined. And it is commonly recognized that diasporas play an important role in the economic development of their countries of origin. They can help create businesses and spur entrepreneurship and transfer new knowledge and skills. Scientific diaspora are great assets for one country, for they know the best of both worlds, and it may provide counseling for science and technology policy or mentorship to young scientists who wish to pursue a career either abroad or in their home country. Many of them want to use their expertise to build enduring partnerships at the doctoral level. For instance, I'm in contact with several of those professors in the United States that would like to launch really international doctoral programs. They are all, in fact, ambassadors of their own country's science enterprise, I think. And we should be working closely with them. Because they are fully integrated in the ecosystems of their host country, they have the capability to initiate and help develop long-term scientific partnerships with institutions in their home country if they wish to do so. And the expertise they hold of their host countries is a great asset for advising on public policies at home, for instance. So we want to act as bridges between their knowledge and policymakers' needs in France, for instance. And in a sense, scientific diasporas contribute to structuring bilateral relationships between countries as well. These relationships start on a researcher to researcher level, usually, but we want to bring these partnerships to maturity, to involve students and institutions, and it's more maybe our role as a science office to do so. And that's exactly how the newly created International Research Center between CNRS and University of Arizona, for instance, started back in the days. It's the first center of its kind, and it's a great model of how we want to work with the scientific community.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mireille. I have so many questions in my mind, but unfortunately we are coming to the end of our to close the event. So my question, my last question might be, what would you recommend to a young person in earlier stage of his or her career, you know, who wants to get more involved in science policy or science diplomacy? I think many people are just wondering, you know, you just changed your field, but we also heard a lot about your background, your field, but so what can they do? What do you recommend for them?
First of all, I think there is no one path to become a science diplomat. And that's very important to keep in mind. Science diplomacy is not a career path, unlike regular diplomacy. It's about connecting people, promoting science. So if you like it, and then go for it, basically. The singularity also of your path can also be a great asset in that. And for instance, in my team, there are people coming from very different backgrounds. And the only thing they have in common is a scientific degree. So of course, a scientific degree can help in doing science diplomacy. It's even important, but it's not all of it. And it's important indeed to know the research environment. Of course, a prior experience in research and development is a great way to grasp the issues that are at stake and ways to tackle them. A double degree in science and in political science would be also very helpful. And there are now more and more programs that exist to maybe get more training in the field of science diplomacy that it used to. I mean, at the time I started this type of mission, I think there were very little programs that would train people to do that. So I would really, if you feel like this is something that you would like to do, then go for it. There is many opportunities for you down there, either in the United States or at the European level.
Thank you, Mireille. Probably they're just going to follow these recommendations. And now it is time to host some questions. Let's begin with the questions asked in the registration process. So the first one is, what are the benefits for early career researchers to come to France? What is typical salary range, benefits, etc.? What about coming later in your career as a tenure track professor or in the US. You mentioned some of the points, when you're talking about France, but would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, it's difficult to compare in terms of salary between the United States and France, because as I was saying, the salary are still a little bit low in France, but we hope that with the new research programming law, they are going to be reevaluated. At least it's the plan. But besides the salary by itself, it's the cost of living that is very different from the United States. You have to keep in mind that health costs nothing. I mean, you don't have to pay or very little to pay for your health insurance, for instance, in France. You don't have to pay for, if you plan to have a family, for your kids to be educated. You have many of these, let's say, benefits, even if they are not real one. I mean, if they are not termed benefits, but it's really something that makes a big difference if you live in the United States and if you live in France. You have also, being in a lab, the lab in France have a different also structure than in the United States, meaning that a lot of labs in the United States are based on soft money or on grants, and people working in the lab are paid by grants. In France, engineers, technicians are paid by research organizations. They are not depending upon the grant that you will be able to raise. It's the same for PhD students. PhD students have a salary coming from the Ministry of Research, and there are also foundations that are funding a salary for PhD students. So you want, of course, you can have also some funding as part of the ANR funding for a student, but it's not mandatory to include a salary for a student in grants when you request grant from ANR. You have a common platform, technical platform that are shared among all labs within a research unit. So you have access to high technology with specific dedicated people working on that facilities that help your everyday research. So that there is really a completely different type of research environment. So that's why it's very difficult to compare in terms of salary, even though I agree the level of the salary are still low in France. But as I was saying, there is hope that this will change very soon. And really the research programming law offers many other opportunities that didn't exist 2 years ago. So it's really also a country that is moving very fast and that knows the struggle of the scientists in the country. So my hope is that this situation will really become even more attractive in the future. And when you are, as I was saying, if you apply to any kind of funding at the European level, France is part of Europe. So if you have an ERC grant, for instance, you can work in France as a PI, develop your own ideas and develop your own lab. And basically you choose wherever you want to work. So it's also something to keep in mind.
Yes, as I say, yeah. I think you really promote so many other things. Not only I think salary is just one part of this, big picture. So what you have told is really important, because even you have a high salary, but if you just pay for, health insurance or rent and you just finish it and nothing left, it doesn't really mean anything. So what you have shared is really important, because cost of living is one of the most important parts. I mean, the questions in the researcher's mind. I know it because I was also a postdoc in Georgetown University, and I was just thinking not the salary, but the other things more. So thank you very much for all this information. And the second question is about how can the French scientists working in the DC area get involved with the scientific delegation at the French embassy?
There is nothing difficult about that. On the contrary, just contact us. You have there is this website, francescience.com, that we will share. We have a newsletter coming every month that we would be very happy to include you in the mailing list, and contact us directly. We will be happy to include you in our events. We organize every 2 months or so an apéro des sciences, where we give the floor to scientists from the Washington area, and every consulate general also organize the same kind of thing in the United States. So just contact us. We will be happy to include you in our in our list of contacts, and invite you to all of our events at the embassy. Really, don't hesitate to contact us. And I guess you will share, Daria, my contact information.
Sure, we will.
With everybody. And,
and thank you, Mireille.
Yeah.
We are also going to share the website and your contact information of the office.
We welcome everyone
later on. Thank you. So there is another question in the chat box that I saw, and it is, does the office keep a repository of French scientists established in the US and the science they are doing? Can they share opportunities? I could see this is a powerful way to leverage connections and share opportunities for collaboration in between US and France.
So the question is about how, if we keep records of
of the French scientists in the US.
The work that we are doing right now with the French scientific diaspora. It's really to better know this, all of you, let's say, because we know some of you, but it's difficult for us to be sure that we are in contact with all the community. And so again, don't hesitate to get in touch with us, just to make sure that you are part of our network. And if you are not, we will be happy to include you. And basically, it's really the aim of this apéro des sciences, for instance, it's really to give the floor every 2 months to 3 scientists from the diaspora, and make the rest of the community know about their work, know about what they do, and that way, exactly what was mentioned, is that the way to foster collaboration, to make people know what everybody is doing and where, and to help those people to connect together. Even when I began my post in Los Angeles, I organized for the first time the first meeting of all French scientists of the region of Los Angeles. It was the first time for them to meet. It's something that we have difficulty to believe, but sometimes people from the same country working in science and living in the same area don't know each other. So we are more than happy to facilitate these contacts and to facilitate collaboration. And again, if you have any project of collaboration with France, we will be more than happy to help you to establish those collaboration and put you in contact with the right people in France working in your field of research and knowing about the labs that are active in the field of research that you are, if you have difficulty. I know that after living after many years in the United States, it's sometimes difficult to identify who is working on what in France. And so we are here to help you and to establish meaningful contact for you.
Mireille, and also these kind of events might be helpful for you to reach out the other diaspora networks who just watch this and try to connect you. I think it might be a good way to create new contacts with them. Because after, for example, our annual meeting with the European scientific diasporas, we just realized that there are more scientific diasporas because they want to connect with us, so that now we are aware of the new groups, diaspora networks. And as EURAXESS North America, we really try to engage them and help them to connect, or sometimes create some connections between the embassies. So I hope these kind of events are also going to be useful for us to reach new diaspora networks. So there is probably we are not going to cover all the questions because we have more, but I'm just looking. You can also see the questions in the chat and choose one of them. But I see 3 more or 4 more, but I'm just going to choose one which is related to your field. So were there any stigmas surrounding HIV/AIDS research in France when you started your career? If so, what types of challenges did these stigmas present and how did you overcome them?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the first part of the question. Is where did I begin my...
Yeah, were there any stigmas surrounding HIV or AIDS research in France when you started your career? If so, what types of challenges? So what was the challenges at the beginning of your career when you started, for your research?
Well, it was the time where the association of patients with HIV were very active. I don't know, maybe most of you are too young to remember that time, but as you may recall, this was first a disease that was only a disease for gays and homosexual, and then heterosexual were infected as well, and then people with that were transfused with a high amount of blood got positive. So it was really at that time that I began my and it was the time where I think HIV was isolated in 83. I began my career in 86. So this was a very active moment for all the association of patients that were very active in the field. But as far as the science was concerned, to me, there were no specific stigma. It was more the communities of people that were infected that were subject to stigmas. And the more we learned about this disease, the more we saw that it was not only a question of communities, it was really a question of how this virus was transmitted, and that it was very important to work actively on those mechanisms of transmission, to block them. At the first, it was to block them. And we, as far as I know, there are still no vaccine for HIV, but we are able now to, patient with HIV can live with this disease now, which is a big breakthrough, because at the time I began my career, this was a disease that was lethal. The people were dying of AIDS. Nowadays, people are not dying of AIDS anymore. And what I can say is that this very active association did a lot of, it was very good for research, because by their action, a lot of private funding was indeed put on the table to fight the disease, and patients were really very involved in promoting the necessity for science in the field, and so starting a career in that field at that time was really a chance for me, because it was being at the right time at the right place. Pasteur Institute was a place where the virus has been isolated, and so. So I don't know if I answer correctly all the question, but
yes,
to me, there was no stigma on the scientific part. On the contrary, I think we benefited a lot from all the actions that all the association of patients were doing. And we had, I can share with you that, that we had demonstration in front of convention centers during scientific conferences, very regular demonstration by patient association saying that things has to be done and that people has to mobilize. But the most people that suffer from stigmas were the people contaminated, in fact.
Thank you, Mireille. So we have other questions, but unfortunately we reached 1 hour in our event. So I want to say thank you again for joining us today, for sharing all these very valuable information about friends, your office, yourself, your career path. So now it's time to say goodbye to our audience. So I really enjoyed our chat and learned a lot about the science, technology, and innovation landscape of France and your embassy. And of course, you have an inspiring career path. So thank you again. And we hosted science diplomats and attaches from the EU delegation in the US, Austria, Switzerland, Germany, and Ireland in our previous chats. Today, Mireille Guyader from French Embassy in Washington, D.C. was with us. And I would like to invite you to visit our website or YouTube channel to watch our previous coffee chats. You can see the links now in the chat box, or just visit our website, EURAXESS North America's website. Thank you all once again, and we hope to see you in our next coffee chat. Thank you, Mireille.
Thank you so much, Daria, for this opportunity, and don't hesitate to share my contact information. Yes, and thank you to all for staying with us today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.